Yeah. Hair flip. Yeah, I'm a badass bitch. I don't like it. Hair flip. Yeah. Oh my god. So you guys should be happy. Oh my goodness. Hair flip. But anyways, hair flip. And hair flipping on your toes. Hi.
Elsa. From Sven the snarky reindeer to Olaf the lounging singing snowman to its parting message about the power of sisterly love, Frozen broke major ground for Disney as a feel-good, feminist-friendly entry to its canon of classic princess fare. And to accomplish that, all they had to change about the source material was, well, everything. Frozen is based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen, a lengthy, convoluted meditation on the nature of evil in the guise of a classic fairy tale. In the original story, the Snow Queen isn't a misunderstood teenager, struggling to bear the weight of her epic ice-making powers and the legacy of some seriously lousy parenting. Instead, she's a cold, creepy, inhuman villainess with an unsavory penchant for kissing underage boys. Yes, kissing underage boys. In Andersen's story, the titular queen kidnaps a little boy named Kay, smooches him to give him amnesia, and transports him back to her ice palace in the north, where she makes him do math puzzles all day and all night. By the time Kay's sister finds him several years later, he is a wrung-out shadow of his former self and downright dangerous with frostbite. Oh, and the Snow Queen doesn't sing so much as one single power ballad, thus cementing her status as an irredeemable monster. So the Snow Queen was definitely who Disney had pointed Elsa to be. It's who she was based off of. But the Snow Queen was an evil, bitter queen that basically kidnapped little boys and kissed them in the mouth. Low-key pedophile. Whatever. Moving right along. So Disney definitely went off of that story. Of course, they just changed some things like they normally do. Even the producer, Peter Dell, stated that Frozen was based off of Elsa being the Snow Queen. So let's get into what he had to say about who they were originally, because Elsa and Anna weren't even sisters at the beginning. They knew that this movie was really dark because they didn't have a choice, because the Snow Queen, she was really dark. There was really no way of making her good. She was a bad person. I mean, especially kissing little boys in the mouth. Oh, come on now. So let's get into what he had to say. He said, at first, Elsa and Anna were not sisters and weren't royal. Elsa still had her Snow Queen powers, but she was evil. We started out with an evil female villain and an innocent female heroine, and at the ending involved a big epic battle with the snow monsters that Elsa had created as her army, said the producer. The alternate version of the movie opens up with the prophecy that a ruler with a frozen heart will bring destruction to the kingdom of Arendelle. We learn that Elsa was stood up at the altar on her wedding day and froze her own heart so she will never have to love again. So Anna and everyone else assume Elsa is the prophecy, which, the prophecy was warning of. Cut to the ending, and Elsa creates an army of snow monsters to attack Anna and Kristoff. To counter the army, Prince Hans, still Two-Face, triggers a huge avalanche, not caring that it will put the people of Arendelle in jeopardy. Anna convinces Elsa to use her powers for good to save Arendelle. The twist. Let's get into that. It turns out the prophecy in the beginning about Hans is not Elsa. It's about Hans. Hans is the only one with the frozen heart. So Elsa saves Arendelle and her frozen heart is unfroze so she can love again. Yeah, that's a lot to take in. And everyone behind the movie thought so too. It wasn't satisfying, says Dell. We had no emotional connection to Elsa. We didn't care about her because she had spent the whole movie being the villain. We weren't drawn in. The characters weren't relatable. Directors Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee went back to the drawing board and began to flesh out a story that will go on to win 2 Oscars and the best song, Let It Go, and over $1.2 billion at the global box office. But if you also didn't know, did you know Elsa's a lesbian? Elsa gets girlfriend love interest in Frozen 3. Fire up the rumor mill because it's going to be a busy day. According to reports, Elsa will be getting a girlfriend in Frozen 3, following a years-long campaign for greater LGBTQ inclusion in Disney animation. With the studio just weeks away from the release of highly anticipated Frozen 2, we got this cover report that Mickey Mouse House is already looking towards the next installment of the billion-dollar film series. On Monday, the entertainment website claims sources say at Disney has plans to give Elsa a female love interest in Frozen 3. I would love to hear how everyone in the audience right now feels about this. Will you be letting your child watch Frozen 3 with Elsa getting a female love interest? I think it's a great idea, but I don't know if the world's ready for that. Do you? So maybe let's answer that question. Do you think that the world is ready for a lesbian queen on Disney? So if you didn't know, Elsa already had a girlfriend in Frozen 2, but they removed it towards the final cut of the film. So they already have made her a lesbian, so she is a lesbian, her character. So it's, in this article, it says, we're told it's definitely happening again. So if I'm saying happening again, it already happened. The intention is for Elsa to have a girlfriend in the threequel, confirming her sexuality in the process. They did originally want to do so in the second film, but it was ultimately decided that it was too soon. We got this on the cover ad. According to our sources, the worry was that some countries would ban the movie if they gave her a girlfriend in Frozen 2. That news comes with some major caveats after spending 6 years making the follow-up of Frozen.
People want Elsa to have a girlfriend.
I realize that, and that's up to Elsa.
When is Elsa going to get a girlfriend?
I don't know.
Shouldn't she?
I hope she does. Look, if that's what she wants.
And when should Elsa get a girlfriend?
I mean, I'm standing right here, but I am her mother in this movie, so it's weird, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I think eventually, yes.
Elsa doesn't define herself by a romantic relationship, as I do not try to define myself by a romantic relationship. She's just figuring out why she has these powers and where she belongs, and she's got the weight of the kingdom on her shoulders.
I love that Elsa, unlike every other princess, is not defined by any kind of romantic relationship. That she's just like an independent woman.
Elsa doesn't focus on romantic love. That's what we love about the entire franchise, is that's not what's important. The love that we focus on is our self-love and our love between the two sisters.
I, for one, definitely believe that Disney is going to make Elsa gay and going to give her a female love interest. I think that they're just using little subtle things to do it in other ways. Like the movie Luca that just came out. I believe while I was watching that, I believe that the characters are gay. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that Luca is gay, but his friend Alberto definitely seems gay. It's more so of like a relationship of two coming to age boys, and I looked at it when they turned into sea monsters is that, it's more so of a gay thing. People can't see this. People can't know this, but it's okay. It's like kind of celebrating, being gay without them actually having to say it. There is a part of the movie too where the female, like love interest, I would say, of Luca's, they start to get a little closer, and Alberto gets really jealous. Like he gets jealous of like, you know, a dude hanging around his girlfriend, you know, type of jealous. Not like I'm jealous you're making friends with somebody else, but that's how Disney tried to push it, you know, but that also goes hand in hand with homosexual relationships. There are a lot of boys that hang out with other guys that are homosexual, and you know, you just so happen to be gay, so you have a crush on him and you like him in a way that he doesn't like you, but the straight boy usually returns that energy of liking you as a friend because he does. And sometimes gay people can kind of misunderstand that energy and view it as, you know, that person being gay as well, because you don't know until you know. So you don't necessarily know what someone is, what their sexuality is, unless you question them about it. So I believe that they kept that part out of them, like literally stating that he's gay. But if you watch, you can definitely tell what a lot of the things that they do, that they are trying to let you know in some way, shape, or form that these young boys are gay, you know, and it's okay type of situation. So let's get into the movie. Technically, is Luca gay? No. I mean, we can't like literally say he's gay, but it did look that way. However, while Disney has not said on record that they're saying if Luca is gay or not, Luca and Alberto, we believe the great minds behind Pixar may have meant for the movie's plot to be an overall metaphor for gayness and acceptance. If we strip away the fish factor and its core, Luca is a story about two boys that have to hide who they are in order to protect themselves from potential harm, backlash, and judgment. The humans around Luca and Alberto fear those who aren't different, and it leads to interesting and thought-provoking depictions of confusion and self-discovery. So, once again, I believe that Luca is gay. Princess Jasmine. Disney's Aladdin boasts a memorable supporting heroine in Jasmine, the smart, bold, brave, and discerning daughter of the Sultan. And there's nothing wrong with that, except, of course, that the authentic retelling of the original story of Aladdin and the Lamp from the Arabian Nights would have looked very different in the Disney princess department. OG Jasmine is not only far more passive and less badass than her Disney counterpart, but she's such an idiot that basically repeated the instrument of Aladdin's downfall. First, she hands Aladdin's lamp over to the evil sorcerer because she doesn't know what it is. After a while, she redeems herself by following Aladdin's simple instructions to seduce and poison the sorcerer so Aladdin can get his lamp back. She then immediately invites the sorcerer's even more evil younger brother, who disguises himself as an old lady, to come live with them in the castle. Fortunately, the genie knows what's what, and Aladdin lives happily ever after, or at least as happy as anyone can hope to live when their wife is so very, very dumb. The 2019 live-action Aladdin tells essentially the same story, but adds a frame narrative. Before he's the genie, Will Smith's character is a sailor spooling the story of Aladdin to his family. It's a fitting change, since its inclusion in the 18th century, the story of Aladdin has been part of one of the 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern folktales best known for its clever, high-stakes frame narrative. Here's how it goes. Shiraz is a bitter king. After discovering that his wife is unfaithful, he decides all women are the same. Each night, he takes a virgin bride. The following day, he executes her before she has a chance to cheat on him. He's an all-around enemy. Then Shiraz's version volunteers the monster's bride, something that no one has done before. The first and supposedly last wedding night, Shiraz tells an entrancing story and stops on a cliffhanger, but she'll continue the following night so he doesn't execute her, and it goes on for 1001 nights. So originally this woman, she volunteered herself as basically tribute, if you will, if this was the Hunger Games. But the difference is that each bride was a virgin, and the king will kill the bride after sleeping with her. But this woman was smart. She knew eventually she was going to be chose. So what she did was volunteer herself, but every night she would tell him a story which started the first night, and she would leave a cliffhanger so that he would want to know what happened. So she was a great storyteller. So he wanted to know. So instead of, killing her, he would keep her alive because that he had to promise her, basically, do not execute me and I will come and finish the story the next night. So she was smart by keeping the stories going on and on and on and on and on, pretty much, even if she had to make things up, if you will. And it lasted for 1,001 nights, hence the Arabian Nights. So when you hear in Aladdin in the theme music, when they're saying Arabian Nights, Arabian Days, things. The original Aladdin is surprisingly different from the Disney version we know today. For one, it's set in China. In early Arabic usage, China was often just a symbol for a faraway land, as in the famous saying attributed to the prophet, "Seek knowledge even as far as China." It is the way of the sense of an abstract, exotic place that China tends to appear in the nights. Razik wrote in an article for a Jam Media collection, in early European adaptations of the story, Aladdin was depicted as being Chinese. Victorian's illustrations gave Aladdin the long braided typical of a Manchurian dynasty. British stage set production, the play in China. Disney, however, modeled its Aladdin from the movie The Thief of Baghdad, 1940, and transplanted the story to a fictional Middle Eastern city. Though the 2000 miniseries Arabian Nights returned to Aladdin's story to China. Aside from the setting, the Goblin Tale is quite different from the cartoon and live-action remake. Aladdin, who in this version is described as being careless and idle, lives with his mother in one of China's biggest cities. His father, a tailor, literally died of shame because Aladdin wouldn't learn a trade and played with the streets. The discrepancies get weirder from there. Aladdin has two genies on his side, one from a lamp and one from a ring. He faces off against three villains, including one who whisked Jasmine to the northern Africa. The Sultan tries to behead Aladdin for not protecting her adequately. Aladdin also sabotages Jasmine's wedding to another man by kidnapping the groom and holding him in a dark cell until the marriage is annulled. The unofficial Disney princesses. Female characters do not meet all these criteria, but are technically still princesses, or set themselves apart as heroines in Disney films are labeled unofficial princesses. They may be seen in some Disney princess products and promotions, like how Princess Anna and Queen Elsa had a cameo in Wreck-It Ralph 2, but these characters are not part of the official franchise. Tinkerbell, the removal of a princess. In 2005, Tinkerbell was removed from the official lineup because Disney wanted her to headline a new sister franchise called Disney Fairies. Around this time, Winx Club, a TV show about fairies studying to harness their powers and fight villains, and Witch, a new TV show about 5 girls with magic, were gaining popularity and creating franchises on their own. And Disney wanted to create their own franchise to compete in this niche. Tinkerbell was originally considered a princess, but while everyone else on the list could adhere to the 5 official rules of being a Disney princess, Tinkerbell was a non-human who could only communicate through nonverbal actions. She was also neither born nor married into royalty and did not have a significant role in the mythology, and was taken out of the list when they decided she could instead head her own franchise as a Disney fairy. That is the nice way of Disney putting that Tinkerbell is irrelevant, that she is a non-factor, that she doesn't matter. So they bumped her out of her spot. But when she got bumped, somebody replaced her. Tinkerbell was removed as princess, and they decided to replace her with the one and only. Yep, you guessed it, Tiana. Disney wanted a black princess, and Tinkerbell, unfortunately, is not that. So they gave her the boot and replaced her with Tiana. It's what they had always pictured, having a black princess. They inducted Tiana into the Princess Hall of Fame, if you will, married her into royalty, and made her a princess because they could not do that with Tinkerbell. So bye-bye, Tinker. Esmeralda. Esmeralda is a Romani woman residing underneath Paris in the hidden catacombs known as the Court of Miracles. She is a member of the Romani culture led by Clopin and works as an entertainment performer, or more specifically, a dancer, both on the streets and during more professional events such as the Festival of Fools. She is regularly accompanied by her goat, who acts as her pet, confidant, and assist during her performances. Esmeralda is verbally powerful, streetwise, cunning, positive, and morale, but also smart. She was sole individual in all of France to downright rebel against Frollo during his reign, and was openly against the judge's accusations of claiming the Romani culture to be a gang of thieves who engaged in unholy practices of witchcraft. Due to this, she was often the target of arrest. But as mentioned above, Esmeralda is cunning, independent character who was shown to have talent of outsmarting and invading Frollo's grasp time and time again. Now let's get into what really happened to Esmeralda. In the original story, Frollo successfully kills Esmeralda by hanging her. In the film, Quasimodo prevents her tragic death by rescuing her, but this also occurred in an episode of PBS series Wishbone, where titular Jack Russell Tier, in the role of Quasimodo, he rescues her from being hanged to death by Frollo. In the novel, did you know that Esmeralda was only 16 years old? In the film, she appears to be older and more mature. She's believed to be in her early 20s. The white dress that Esmeralda wears at the end of the movie is actually an underdress, which means that Esmeralda's white dress underwear during the 20th century, but were permitted to keep the undergarments to protect their modesty. Originally following the song Court of Miracles, after Thwart's Copeland's attempted execution of Quasimodo and Phoebus by hanging, there was actually going to be a scene showing Esmeralda's wedding to Phoebus, only for the sad wedding to be interrupted all of a sudden of Frollo and his minions. So what happened is Quasimodo's guardian Frollo betrays Esmeralda and sends her to her death when he laughs as Esmeralda is hung. Quasimodo kills Frollo and visits a cemetery where he mourns Esmeralda, eventually dying of starvation on her grave. Now there is another version of this as well, but basically with the same ending. So in Victor Hugo's book, what happens is Frollo betrays Esmeralda by handing her into the authorities, and she is sentenced to death for a crime he committed, that Frollo did. Frollo watches her public hanging from the cathedral balcony and laughs as she dies, prompting Quasimodo to push him to his death in a fit of rage. Grieving for Esmeralda, Quasimodo then takes her to her grave and refuses to leave her body, meaning he dies too of starvation. Around 18 months later, someone opens the tomb and finds their body. As he tries to separate them, they crumble to dust. So, once again, Esmeralda was only 16 years old. I find it mighty weird that Disney gets off on, letting minors be princesses in movies and try to portray them as older, while these grown men like Frollo, everyone, Quasimodo, everyone that was in love with her was an adult. She was a kid. She was a teenager in a movie with all of these older men coming after her. Weird, Disney. Weird. Thumbelina, or How to Deal with a Sexual Predator. So let's start by getting into the awful display of parenting that Disney always does. For some reason, I always get this feeling that Disney executes parents in these movies to do a do what thou wilt type of situation with kids, to kind of make them feel that they can truly do whatever they want. If you pay attention to the song, Let It Go, Elsa says, no right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free. That is bad. There's no right, no wrong. There's no rules. You can basically just do whatever you want to do. And if it's bad, it's still okay. It's kind of just teaching people, negative things. Instead of it being a learn from your mistake type of situation, it's just you can do what you will, type of situation. So let's get into her mother, shall we? So her mother tells her in the movie, she offers Thumbelina some really poor advice. And she says, Thumbelina, don't ever wish to be anything other but what you are, which is supposed to be like, be true to yourself or don't run away from who you are, or any sort of thing in that nature in a Disney movie, especially. But instead it comes off as awkward and weird. Like, if I'm bored and downtrodden, why can't I wish to be rich and happy? And why can't Thumbelina wish to be a fairy, or wish to be a normal size so she's not so lonely? And for goodness sakes, the woman bought from a witch and she was birthed out of a flower. So obviously magic exists, and obviously anything can happen. This mother is awful and baked her daughter into a pie. Nuff said. Thumbelina just wants to find someone like her. And for it be soon, she gets her wish. When creepy, horny 16-year-old Cornelius, crowned prince of fairies, peers into her window after floating around on his bumblebee and watches her dance around. Oh, and then he enters the house, uninvited, through the window that had been left open a crack, Mother of the Year, and then he destroys part of her storybook, a crime against humanity. No one destroys books except if you're a sheep in the beginning of Beauty and the Beast and don't know better. And then pops in her and scares her half to death while she pretends dancing with an imaginary prince, which sounds like a creepier, less sincere version of a similar first meeting that happened between a prince and princess in the movie Don Bluth worked on for a certain company that she was trying to rebel against. Instead of being suave and debonair and patient like Philip was to Briar Rose, Cornelius gets defensive and yells at her for staring, which, I mean, you just broke into her house and came off like a threatening rapist. She's allowed to be a little startled and taken back. Thumbelina, who is simple and doesn't quite understand how she should react when being more or less sexually harassed by a predator, decides to make friends because he's small like her, instead of sickening a dog on her like most people should do. Further proof that Thumbelina does not have all her eggs in her basket. When Cornelius actually formally introduces himself, she reveals she thinks Thumbelina is a good name. And Cornelius is hilarious and silly. You're named after a body part. Bitch. An opposed important one, but a body part nonetheless. Get over yourself. Creepy, horny 16-year-old Cornelius is out to get laid tonight. So if you haven't seen Thumbelina, you know, the age-old story. She's born in a flower. She's the size of a thumb. The story was inspired by the story Tom Thumb. And, you know, she was as big as a thumb, and, you know, she travels from place to place, from flower to flower and whatnot. She ended up getting scooped up by some frogs and mouses, and she meets all type of animals along the way. And so she finally bumps into her fairy prince, which in the Anderson version, she meets later. So she goes through all of these things before meeting the prince. In the movie, the prince goes after her to save her after she's captured. But in Anderson's, she met the prince after, you know, all of that stuff happened. And once they met each other, they married and they lived happily ever after, pretty much, you know, traveling from flower to flower. Her name also was changed to Maya after she married the prince. Now, all of that would be fine and dandy if allegedly Thumbelina wasn't 12 years old at the time. Everyone assumes that Thumbelina was 16. And let's just say this. Let's just say she was 16. Why is it okay to pressure two 16-year-olds to get married? Doesn't marriage mean sex? So I feel like with the majority of these stories, because Thumbelina didn't get picked up right away, when Anderson first came out with it, it kept getting disproved. The places that he was trying to get it published, they wouldn't publish it, and they wouldn't publish it at the beginning, allegedly because Thumbelina was listed as 12. Not that it mattered at that point in time. They just didn't like the story, you know. So everyone pretty much at that point in time when Anderson wrote these fairy tales, they, you know, were okay with underage, you know, anything, you know, it wasn't a big stigma, you know, on it how it is in present day. So even if they were, you know, once again, and the majority of the Disney princesses are teenagers when they get married. I think a lot of people overlook that these are kids, you know. That's why kids relate to them, because that is what they are. They just draw them to look a little older just because they have breasts and things of that nature. So does a 15-year-old, so does a 12-year-old, so does a 13-year-old. So I find it weird that Disney has this infatuation with underage, with minors getting married, with minors having children. So it's no different than the Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 with Esmeralda. Say that, you know, because she truly died, so it there couldn't have been a part 2 because she died. But okay, say it happened how Disney said it happened in the theory in the story that they made about Esmeralda or the Hunchback of Notre Dame. If she, when she did get married and with Phoebus in the second film and they had a child, which is what it states, that she would have been 17 still, because technically she was 16 in the first movie. So think about it, you know? So, I mean, they're still like making teenagers be married and having children with adults, or 2 minors getting married and having children. Like, it's still weird. You know, if you ask me, Disney, a little weird, bro. A little weird.
Aren't you coming? Coming for what? The new prince is being born. Come on.
We're about to witness a miracle. So beautiful, so wonderful.
Oh my God!
That's the new prince? That's life.